I'm almost
Uh,
afraid at this point. I mean, really.
well, we're still horror versus horror, so it can be safe for you. So I'm gonna go ahead, spin my wheel for you, and let's see who you got.
Oh.
Okay, okay. Very interesting, very interesting. This is our first kaiju of the Halloween special. This is Mothra,
Oh God.
the queen of the monsters herself. Yes.
All right. And I got the Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
This works, and let me tell you why. All right, go ahead and give our audience a breakdown of Killer Clowns from Outer Space, one of the greatest horror movies ever conceived.
Listen, if you love 80s and you love horror and you love sci-fi, you have to watch Killer Clowns from Outer Space because it is essentially these clowns that land here on Earth in a giant spaceship that looks like a big top tent,
Mm-hmm.
and they go into a small town and they will kidnap people and cocoon them in cotton candy cocoons and
Yes.
stick swirly straws into them and drink their brains. And they have uh, popcorn guns that when the
Mhm.
popcorn lands on you and you leave, they eventually will grow little baby clowns that can eat you and attack you until the bigger clowns get there.
Yep. They also have boxing glove skills. They're very strong. They have big hammers. They have the cotton candy gun. They have any
Oh,
sort of the shadow puppets. Yes.
they have a balloon dog that can sniff you out.
Hmm. And if you happen to be two ice cream men, they also can give themselves giant tits
To get your ice cream.
to get your ice cream. Yes. And
I won't say that. I won't spoil the ending.
well, you know what? Oh, your audio cut out just for a second.
Oh, did it? Oh no, I whispered. I
Oh,
mimed
okay. Well, you
because
know what? Well, Eden won't spoil the ending, but I'll spoil something. Clownzilla exists, and I feel like you might want to use that as ammunition for
that's
this
true. You kind of
fight.
have to use Clownzilla.
They also have acid pies.
Oh yeah,
They'll hit you with a pie, and there's acid in it.
and but they will put a cherry on top, so
Yep.
kind
It's
of
a
mean, kind of nice.
it's a garnish.
You know, they want to make
Sour
sure you're a
sweet
nice
gone.
pie.
And there's a lot of these clowns. There's a lot of them.
There are a ton of them.
Mm-hmm.
Is insane to me because I mean it's hard to like they did this as at horror nights and just trying to like figure out which clowns are which is the craziest thing
Hmm.
because they some of them look alike but
Right.
they're not they're yeah I'm looking at the list there's about like 10
They
different
have official names.
yes um Spike is my favorite because just from that what are you gonna do knock my block off is
Yeah.
the greatest line
And then he proceeds to knock his block off.
and steal his motorcycle.
There's I like the shadow puppet one. That's a fun effect that makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, he
Um
doesn't need that.
there's the fat one that like beckons to like the child outside the like burger
Pizza
place or
place.
something.
That I'm pretty sure that's Fatso. There's Jumbo, Fatso, Shorty, Rudy, Spike, Slim, Chubby, and Bebo. Yeah, and Daisy. Oh, Daisy and Rosebud, which are the two lady clowns.
Uh and those are the killer clowns from outer space. If you have not seen this movie, it's a must watch. I have to watch it. I'll have to watch it this year. Also, kind of a bumpin' soundtrack. I just want to point that out.
Oh, I the Dickies theme song for Killer Clowns is on almost every Halloween playlist I have on Spotify.
It's fantastic. Now, speaking of nonsensical plots, let's talk about Mothra for a second. Mothra. Mothra is part of the Godzilla universe, although starred in her first solo movie as just a strictly Mothra movie, which, by the way, Marvel is not the first group to do a cinematic universe where characters had their own movie and then brought them together in a crossover. That hap Toho did that with Godzilla movies, and then Universal did that with the monsters, like in the 30s and 40s. So just saying. But so Mothra is a guardian of the earth, a giant moth who is protected by two tiny twin fairies. They can't fly, but they have magical abilities, and they only speak in unison. And they guard her, and they can feel when Mothra is going to arrive. And Mothra always starts as a giant egg, and then hatches into larvae, which are useless monsters. If you ever play Pokemon and you get your Caterpie that can only use String Shot, that is the Mothra larvae. And then the larvae will cocoon itself and then eventually hatch into Mothra. And now Mothra is a kaiju-sized moth, and Mothra in the beginning is kind of lame and can only like create like a gust of wind with her wings. But as the lore runs deeper, she has like a pollination, like a pollen type move that like puts people to sleep. And I think she can shoot a beam. And if we go by the recent Godzilla King of the Monsters American movie, is like linked to Godzilla as an ally. Godzilla is the king of the monsters, and Mothra is the queen of the monsters. They don't. They're not like a couple or anything, so I don't know why they do that. Um, but it's like a nature thing. But basically, Mothra is a giant moth that is usually a defender of the Earth, like an Earth ally, but at the same time is a kaiju and will cause unlimited collateral damage. But if you see Mothra, it's usually like well, you know what? Things might things might be okay with that. But Mothra usually is the first one to get her ass beaten in any of the crossovers. Godzilla's beat her ass.
Rude.
Dan's beat her ass. The monsters, Ghidorah's beat her ass. A bunch of other monsters have beat Mothra's ass because Mothra is still a moth. But
See, again,
she
not trying to pick winners, but I can already feel how this is gonna go.
but who knows? Mothra is really big, and Clownzilla is not that big
True,
in comparison.
but you can't touch. Side note, real quick, just so you know, I was googling, just looking at Mothra stuff, and one of the first things it says people also ask, "Is Mothra Godzilla's girlfriend?"
Which I don't know how that would work.
The internet, man. But
I'm sure there's
so
fan art.
I feel like
Don't
in a
send that.
way, don't 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 draw the line at Mothra Godzilla fan art. Draw now.
But
Um.
go ahead.
So yeah, Mothra is bigger. She can use her like little wings to make and blow the clowns over. I feel like the only thing the clowns have going for them is that they could like entwine her with some cotton candy, but I
Mhm.
feel like she'd be able to break that with her wings, and she could also get help because I was reading that she can communicate with humans. So like she could get humans to kind of do her like could help attack, but I don't think those humans would last long against the clowns.
No.
Godzilla would come in great because he could throw acid pies at her,
Ah, yeah. That's
possibly
probably.
hit her, and like a butterfly, if you touch their wings, they can't fly anymore. So I feel like if you just touched her, she might
I
be.
feel like that would at least a few of the pies would damage her wings enough that would probably
Yes,
ground her a bit.
but also just cause any way we spin this, wherever they're at, there is going to be mass destruction to the
Oh
human
yes.
world because there's going to be massive gusts of wind, raining acid pies.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's stomping.
Popcorn everywhere.
Yeah, it's going to be a mess. It
Mm.
is not going to be fun. Don't want to be part of that cleanup crew.
Right.
No thanks, Tom
It,
Hanks.
it's actually a pretty good matchup when you think about it, because Mothra, while is still a moth, am probably one of the weaker of Godzilla monsters. Like I have been convinced that Mothra is useless until the King of the Monsters movie where she actually did something. Um but Mothra is still a really, really big moth. I believe she's bigger than Clownzilla, which is a sentence I didn't know I'd say today. Um, but so that gust of wind comes in handy. So, but the killer clowns legion against Mothra is still going to do more than the typical military versus the kaiju,
Oh yes.
because the military never does anything, but the clowns just break the laws of physics all the time.
Oh yeah. I mean, their spaceship is a flying tent,
Yep,
and they
which
can all
means they
fit in a
can
tiny
fly.
clown car,
Hmm.
so they can get around efficiently.
Yeah, which means that they can fly as well because they can, fly up there. Um, and they can make a pie that's big enough to, throw at Mothra. And who knows how that cotton candy gun works because they shoot a person with it and it just coats them like
Yeah.
instantly. So,
And then also if they shoot like the little popcorn gun at her, then she'll just get like grow baby killer clowns that could eat her or
mhm.
attack her while she's flying. So I mean, it'd be pretty even. It'd
Yeah,
be
it's
pretty.
honestly a pretty even match.
I
But
think.
we haven't touched on the main aspect of the show, Eden. How do they come together?
Oh, okay. So that wow, I got so into thinking who would their powers and what they could do.
Mm-hmm. Because they each have a lot. They each have a decent arsenal.
Yeah, I would say so because the twins
Mm-hmm.
they find her and they're trying to hide like protect her little egg, and they come across this just tent because their tent always ends up in the woods so people don't know that they're there.
Mm-hmm.
And it also then people are like, oh, it's a circus, so then it draws people to them. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say they'd find it they're trying to like protect Mothra while she's hatching, but the clowns start to come, which makes her awaken faster because she's
Mm-hmm.
like, I need to protect the earth
Right.
from these killer clowns from outer space.
Sentences you didn't think you'd be saying
No.
on
And
a
she just
podcast.
yells, Justice, and flaps and starts this all out melee between Mothra and the killer clowns.
It just starts an all-out war.
Yeah. And then I feel like we could just really start just other things start coming at some point just to start helping each other out.
Mm-hmm.
But
This actually, how familiar are you with Godzilla lore, Eden?
not at all.
Oh, well, wrap your head around this bullshit. Um, so in Godzilla lore, now I want you to know that this crossover actually means something far worse for the Earth. In Godzilla lore, Mothra flies into space and somehow her like cells from her wings come off like particles of her wings like come off and they merge with space stuff, and this gives birth to Batra, an evil Mothra. Now the killer clowns are from outer space. Now this has happened multiple times because Godzilla cells end up in space and they merge, and then we get Space Godzilla,
Oh
which
gosh.
is Godzilla with two giant crystals on its back, and that's pretty much it. It was a weird time the '90s and 2000s were for the Godzilla franchise, but it was a cool time too. They did a lot of stuff where it's like Godzilla cells are now mixed with this, so Godzilla cells got mixed with a plant, and we have a giant plant monster too. Um,
Hey, gotta
but
keep it fresh, gotta keep it interesting.
yep, but what this means is Mothra flies into space where the clowns are because they're flying around, and basically some of her DNA gets to the clowns, and then they are able to create Clownthra.
It's
a
just giant clownzilla with tiny moth wings.
It's a moth clown, if you would, which if that's not a absolutely terrifying visual for you,
That's the
then
worst because moths are good and they're little, but anytime one flies at me, I literally throw a fit because I just run away. So if a clown moth is coming after me,
mhm.
done.
Now imagine if you would. Take Mothra, the giant kaiju-sized moth, but make those wings like polka dot, and then make the face, the head of the moth, one of those killer clown faces. Because the for those of you who are not familiar, the killer clowns from outer space are absolutely grotesque, like character designs. So you've
They
got that flying around.
they literally look like and they are essentially they're giant Halloween clown masks, like oversized clown masks.
Really big.
So they're just massively awkward faces and heads.
And they just look so dirty for some reason.
They do. Then I'm like, I don't know. But see, my brain goes anytime I think of something merging with something that's gonna get wings. A Bug's Life really ruined it for me because anytime it's something big that needs wings, I always think that like it grows, but the wings don't grow, and it's like Heimlich where he's like, "Oh, you all look like ants from up here," and it's like you're still a caterpillar with these tiny, tiny wings. So I would almost see it being like uh, Clownzilla with these tiny wings trying to fly, but never getting anywhere.
I'm a beautiful butterfly.
And they're like always just yelling at him like, come on, we have to go get the, and he's just like trying, and he gets like a foot off the ground and then just classic like slipping on a banana peel. Like wings don't work.
Oh, I really like this matchup. Killer Clowns and Mothra has been a surprisingly even matchup from what I can think about. Now, Killer Clowns versus Godzilla, Killer Clowns aren't going to make it out of there, but Killer Clowns versus a giant moth, yeah, it could work. Fun fact: I don't know if they're all gone, like the original Killer Clowns like costumes.
Uh,
Um, but I don't know if you're
Something in the
familiar.
head, the masks are still around. They're not in great shape, but they are still around.
Oh, because some of them are not. Some of them, if you're familiar with a little movie called Ernest Scared Stupid, um, there are trolls in that movie that reuse the costumes from Killer Clowns. They just paint them brown to make them into trolls. So I don't. I think a lot of the original costumes are mostly lost because they moved them to Ernest Scared Stupid.
Yeah, the someone found the like the head somewhere and they weren't preserved very well. But Universal has used them 2 years in a row at Halloween Horror Nights, so they have new versions
Ah,
that we could also use.
maybe for the sequel that they've been talking about for years.
Which really makes me mad because there are a lot of people down here who have shirts that say Killer Clowns from Outer Space Grip Team. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you just had to make this because you love the movie. Because I would work on that movie and I can't find it anywhere.
Hmm. I don't think it's happening,
I don't either.
but
The world's missing out.
wow, what a scenario.